tell us just a little bit about who you are and how you came to this work.
Yeah, I take this who am I question really seriously. So it gets a little poetic every time I answer it. Um, but I am from Alabama. I'm a girl raised in the South. Um, I am newly finding my gender non-conforming identity, really pushing the limits on what femininity and masculinity look like in a binary system. Really choosing for myself every day how I want to show up, how I need to show up to keep my folks, my community, my people safe. So I do call myself a gatekeeper, not necessarily a birth keeper, but a gatekeeper for sure. I do believe there are some things that Black folks get to keep for themselves, period. Um, I'm an herbalist. I am a parent. I'm a life partner. I'm a landowner in Durham, North Carolina on Lumbee Indian land. I'm married to a Lumbee Indian. Um, hmm, I am an educator. I am a talker to a plan. I love babies. I love bumps. I love animals. I love bees. I love bees. Um, and yeah, that's a little bit about me. That's who I am. I am also, excuse me, I'm a daughter of Annette Nicole Deneen McWilliams, Lanier McWilliams. I'm the granddaughter of Josie Marie Lanier Granberry. I'm the great granddaughter of Doreen, the great great granddaughter of Viola. And I am of these Black women and Black femmes. They have made me who I am. It's their shoulders that I stand on, their tongue, their hips, their hair, their legs. I have all of those things. So that's who I am.
It's always, I love starting off with that question too, because it's always so interesting and special the way that people respond to it. I asked you that question today and you might answer it completely different on Friday. And I just love to receive how people show up for themselves and how we're always changing and being able to reshape and affirm our identities. And yeah, that was really beautiful. You said a couple of things that I want to just tease out a little bit. Um, you used, first of all, you named that you are a landowner, and that is something that I have not experienced in someone. I like introducing themselves, naming that they are a landowner. That's really important and really special. And congratulations to you. That's everything. But you also mentioned that you are a gatekeeper, not necessarily a birth keeper. And I want to dig into that a little bit. Recently, in my journey, I've been playing around with language as well. Really trying to do away with the doula title and trying to figure out what really encapsulates what I offer to community and families and so on. And so gatekeeper, tell us more about what that means for you and why you've chosen that language.
Yeah, so I think gatekeeper I hold really fast too because I really consider birth to be a portal, a gate, which I think we can like easily identify. Birth is a door, or a gate or a portal or whatever icon feels, I guess, relevant to you. But for me, it's a gate. I really do understand birth to be like this kind of like latch, right? Of like, and me being a bridge, me being a person to help open and hold open the gate as people are passing through. Also just really love, I think the stories of like the generation before the Black Power midwives who are, working in very rural Southern areas and how there's this one story of this Gullah-Geechee midwife who was the midwife and her husband was the undertaker. And when her husband died, she took over the family business and was now the gatekeeper for both birth and death. And I think about that so often because I'm so close to the people, to their land. Um, And so, yeah, I'm thinking about birth and thinking of myself as a gatekeeper. Also, because I think of myself as a facilitator. I'm trained by Adrienne Marie Brown and the Emergent Strategy Ideation Institute to be a facilitator. So, what I do as I'm finding my way away from the word doula, or a better definition for it, is that I'm a facilitator. I make things easy. I put my back down as a bridge for people to be able to get closer to the things that they need. I open the gate, I close the gate for folks who don't need to be in this room. And yeah, that's what I love about being a
So you
gatekeeper.
said that you did your training at through H and Song. What was the moment, if there was one moment or many moments that let you know that you were on this path into birth work as a gatekeeper? Has this been a part of your lineage? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Um, so it's a really hard and muddy one because my family, all sides of my family, come from the deep South. As a matter of fact, both of my families have ties to Uniontown, Alabama, which was a auction town. Um, and so my father's side of the family, through I think like the second leg of the Great Migration, went up from Alabama through to Cleveland. My mother's side of the family went up from Alabama to Mississippi and the Delta of Mississippi and Tennessee, and then up to Chicago, where my grandparents met and started their life together. And both of those families, I think, really quickly learned that the midwives in the family were being persecuted and hunted as witches. And though those women never left, and died subsequently in their respective communities, I think it was very clear that being a midwife and doing midwifery work was dangerous. And so both sides of my families held very fast to two different religions. So my father's side of the family, Nation of Islam, my mother's side of the family, Southside Chicago Catholics. Um, and never talked about the midwives in our family. Like, was very much like, no, don't do any of that witchy stuff. Just just stay here and follow the Lord and you'll be fine. And that was really hard. So it wasn't until I got older and I went to college and was having conversations about access to healthcare, was having conversations about the Black maternal health crisis in 2015, before we had words for the Black maternal health crisis. And then, of course, my college best friend was pregnant our freshman year, first semester. And I was, we were so young, we didn't know what we were doing. She received no prenatal care. She went straight into labor, no epidural, no nothing. We, just like all of the things, and we just didn't know. And so it wasn't until a college professor of mine wanted to talk with us again about access to healthcare, about the intersections of access to healthcare, about Black folks and accessing healthcare, about disabled folks or differently able folks and healthcare, about being poor and accessing healthcare, about being, just all the things. And then, of course, you narrow it down to the intersection of gender and sex and healthcare. We start talking about childbirth. And I think to myself, this has got to be, this is going to be the easiest chapter. No big deal. We've been doing birth for a millennia. They got that down to a science. It's cool. It's A plus. I'm done. And then, we started having that conversation, and I was like, yo, but my best friend just went through the same thing. And so you mean to tell me she could have died? You mean to tell me that like we should have done more? You mean to tell me that we could have done more? And I think all of that just kind of like took me in a rapture. And so through school, did my first training. It was for free at college because college paid for it. It was a donor training. It was terrible. I then went on to do just more like independent study as a doula, more reading, more research, and then moved to Brooklyn and studied with Ancient Song, which was glorious. It was wonderful. Continued to be a doula through there. But then it was during that time too where I started to talk more with my grandparents about what I was doing. And they were like, oh, fuck. Like that was the one thing we were supposed to keep you away from. Like, did you know that we were all caught by midwives? And I was like, no. And they were like, did you know my first cousins were midwives because their mother's mother was a midwife and taught all her daughters how to be midwives. And I thought to myself, why are we not talking about this? Like, this is the conversation I needed to be able to have in class. But instead, my question in class was, if this birth thing is actually not down to a science and we're actually really messing it up, who's fixing it? The answer was doulas. And the answer should have been, I know who's fixing it. It's there in my family lineage. So I take like all of those like reflections and thoughts on like my journey towards birth work. And though it is in my lineage, I didn't know it. And so I think that's the other really important part about talking about it and understanding more our connections to the Southern stories of our families, because they really do highlight not just like Black history in America, but like our own personal responsibilities and callings. And it makes it so much easier for us to identify. I like the way I talk about with the herbs and people is like, you can look at a peach tree your entire life. And if you don't know what a peach tree can do for you, you'll look at the peach tree and just say, the only thing it can give me is a piece of fruit, you know? And so that's the way that I think about Black history. Like, we've been looking at these stories for so long, and we don't know that there are hints and there are icons and there are characters that are actually very deeply tied to our assignments here. Um, and that's for me, I think what it's really become is I have been looking at the problem, didn't know it was a problem my entire life. I watched all my mother's sorority sisters become, my mother's best friends and my aunties and TTs and good girlfriends and all that good stuff. I watched all of them become parents before I even knew that there was something that I could do, not just to be helpful, but to be like deeply nourishing to them, to be a deep and true support to them. Um, and so, yeah, so that's been my journey. It's been both academic, learning my own personal family history, but then also just like a personal connection to people who can and do get pregnant, and sometimes don't want to be pregnant, and all of the things. So, yeah.
Ah, yes. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. The peach tree analogy gave me chills. Okay. I was like, yes, trying to contain myself over here. Yes.
And like we love a good peach tree. We love peaches. Peaches are wonderful, but especially nausea, really understanding how common nausea is in people with uteruses and in people with wounds is like we experience and we just choke down nausea like from 10 until we die, not knowing that like peach leaves are.
Yes. I love that. Um, my mind is going in a lot of places right now, so I'm trying to stay focused. um,
My mind and my mouth goes in 1,000 different directions. So I understand. Reel me back in when you need me to come back.
no, I love it. I love it. We're just gonna flow with it. Um, you said, I'm definitely paraphrasing, but you said something about um, just that we have richness in unearthing the stories of um, those in the South, our families in the South, the lineages of those in the South. I find so my folks are from the South as well, although I was born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri. My people are from Georgia, Mississippi, Oklahoma, um, and maybe even some of the Carolinas. I'm still learning. Um, And I find that when I'm definitely that person in my family that is like asking questions like, hey, what's up? I need to know. And I find that in asking questions, it can bring up a lot, obviously, of pain and trauma and whatnot. Um, as a person from the South who has lived all over and also agrees that uncovering those stories is important, how have you navigated that reality?
Yeah, and there's always one cousin. So I'm not saying like all of the cousins have to become the family historian, but I'm saying if it's your calling, let it be your calling, because I'm definitely the one. And so in practice, what it looked like for me was, I remember, and at every funeral, at every family reunion, at every function, like the old people gather around the table and they like to kick the kids away. They like, for grown folks to be able to talk. But really, what I started to understand grown folks talking to be is storytelling in code. And so it has to be twofold. It has to be you're at a place in your life where you're invited to the table to listen. And as young people, though I do believe the ageist idea of like, stay in a child's place or, be heard and or be seen and not heard, right? And all of those things. We really have to, especially those of us who have the calling to be the family historian and be curious about the stories, to really sit at the table and listen. And then at every function, you hear the same stories. They tell the exact same stories. Really think about the questions that get which different side of the story. What question makes your uncle fired up to tell his side of the story? What question or what piece that always gets missed that you throw in there and then they correct you and say, no, this is how it actually went. Like you have to be just really dedicated to being in conversation when they're already talking, being there when they're already willing to share is, I think, one of the first steps. The other part too is like become a nerd about Black history, become a nerd about understanding war, become a nerd at understanding economy, really, really become interested in the way that things have come to be curious about the systems that are right now. um, and then have those as a backdrop when you're listening to your Black family or your Southern family, you know. Um, so what it looked like for me was, finally understanding my family's story, overlaying the historical context of the Great Migration. That's where it all really kind of started for me. I was talking with my grandfather, my mother's father, just about his family and what they grew in, the Delta of Mississippi. Like, oh, well, we grew cotton, we grew sugar cane. I was like, oh, okay, I've never seen sugar cane. Would you take me to see some one day? Oh, don't worry about it. I could show you some, the next time we go to Mississippi. It's everywhere. Don't worry about it. There's cotton everywhere, here in Alabama. So you already know what that looks like. And okay, well, tell me more about the fields that y'all had. So then I learned about the fact that my grandfather had a mule named Ned when he was a child. His family were sharecroppers. So in college, I learned more about the horrible system of sharecropping in America. I went back and asked him more questions about his time sharecropping. He told me the story of when one of his elder sisters were so upset that their father left in the middle of the night that she burned the entire cotton field because she said if daddy wasn't here working and she wasn't going to work it, he came back from Chicago just to whoop her ass and then got back on the train. Like, so so I remember it and tried to understand like what, and from his perspective, right, what was it like to live through that historical moment. And then I started to kind of piece the things together that he couldn't tell me, right? Like he couldn't tell me and he didn't want to talk a lot about. I had to ask one of his sisters actually why his father left. It was because he had pissed off a white man and the white man wanted to lynch his dad. and couldn't, because he couldn't find him because he had made it to Chicago, stored himself away on a train. Um, but like how they couldn't talk about it. They couldn't talk about where their father had gone, why he had gone, for how long, or when he was going to get back. They didn't know. And as children, they probably really didn't know, but also felt a certain sense of duty to protect the father. And that's a deep trauma that he held his entire life. And so, I start to consider that. Then I start to consider, well, damn, if he came back just to whoop my aunt's ass, how angry must he have been that he put himself in danger just to come back and say, listen, I can come back to you. And not only can I come back to you, I can come back to you and remind you what's right and what's wrong. Now, beating our children is another conversation, but they were living in the early 19s, so I let them be. Um, and so that's the conversation too. But then I also think about the joy, and you always have to, when you're talking to your elders or your older family members, you have to remind them, like, there was a joyous time after that very hard time. He did come back for all 13 of his children and his wife. And he did tell that white man to kiss his ass and paid his debt after working in the Chicago industry for a couple of years. Like, he did find his way. He did bring his children and his wife up north. They did have a wonderful life. They went on to own apartment buildings and become not only landowners, but business owners. My grandfather went to junior college and trade school. He became the first Black man to integrate an industry union on the south side of Chicago. He made so much money that he sent all 4 of his children to Catholic school. Like, there is joy in our stories, but we have to help we're in a place and we have a privilege of understanding comfort and understanding healing when our elders and our older family members they can't, their nervous systems don't have space for that. We do. And so in our trying to understand what they've experienced and what they've been through, we have to help them regulate their nervous systems in telling those stories too. And it takes a lot of space. It takes a lot of healing. I've lost all but one of my grandparents now. And I'm so gentle with this last grandparent in a way that I wasn't able to be with the ones who are now ancestors. And so I will also just say, last thing on learning is be gentle with yourself the same way you want to be gentle with them. Because though the stories can be hard because we understand some of the things that they went through, it's also way too important for you to try to wait and be perfect in your delivery, in your learning. You got to just kind of start. And we as kids, we know our parents and we know our grandparents and we know what they can take and we know what they can't. So you really kind of have to use your intuition in that part too.
Yes, I know it might feel like we've gone off on a little bit of a tangent, and I think that this is so important because it really helps um, the folks who I'm hoping will listen to this understand the context in which gatekeepers, birth keepers, birth workers are working, midwife students, and midwifery practitioners. Like, it's real, it's deep, it's rich. And as we evolve as people, as community, those things are evolving. What we put out into community, what we are experiencing and journeying alongside families with is evolving as well. And all of who we are is brought into that space. And so on that note, I feel like I have an understanding of different elements of who you are and how they are um, um, just how they are expressed in the work that you do, whether it's your identity, where you're from, your love of plants as allies. But I want to give you some space to talk specifically about your areas of expertise and how you use those to connect with your clientele.
Yeah. So I don't call my clientele clients, I call them family. So they are my family and my families that I take care of. Um, I feel like that's just another Southern thing of just like, I really do live on the blocks, or I live on very similar blocks, if not the same block as a lot of the people that I serve. So they be my family for real. They be seeing me come out my house in my robe. They be seeing me while out on my corner. And that's okay. So that's first. Um, my specialty, I really see myself serving this like new Black family. Not necessarily like we're new. I mean, we are new in the sense that a lot of the families that I serve are first time parents. A lot of the families that I serve are trying to get pregnant. But I see us like this new Black family is like we've become this new generation or this new step in evolution of Black folks. We have, new and expanding understandings of freedom, of the freedom we want, of the freedom that we're fighting for. Um, I really see us as like decolonizing a lot of things: time, education, expertise. Like we value different things than the old Black folks, which is um much respect to the elders, but I'm not talking about elders when I talk about old Black folks. And I want to be clear about that. But I also think the families that I serve are um, really clear and can see really clearly the systems that they're up against, and they want someone to stand next to them who's been through it, honestly, who's seen it at this point 70 sometimes. And they want a birth nurse. They want someone who knows the ins and outs of hospital intervention. Um, they want a doula who can get them out of the hospital when they don't want to be in the hospital. They want someone who's connected to the midwives doing the work. And my expertise, I'd say, I'm a full spectrum doula, so I serve folks in fertility, so trying to get pregnant. I'm not a nutritionist or anything like that. I am an herbalist. I call myself a baby herbalist. I've been learning since I was knee high. So really just sharing with people the things that I know about herbs or the things that I've seen herbs do, what I know they're capable of. I'm learning all the time about that. And then also like food, again, not a nutritionist, but I really do believe I think the overarching things about food, that food is our first medicine, that we should eat bright, that we should eat in season, we should eat locally, ethically, without a whole bunch of pesticides and chemicals that change our DNA makeup and affect our hormones and our endocrine system, that kind of thing. So that's fertility. I'd say I pull a lot of that food stuff into my birth work as well, though. So being a birth and labor doula, really helping people throughout their pregnancy, keeping them moving, centering joy in movement. Um, I talk a lot about inner child healing, I think, in my fertility and birth doula work. So really tapping into the spiritual part of becoming a parent, of being an usher to new people on this earth. I don't do a lot of postpartum, and I'm gonna just be honest with you. I do great postpartum bedside after baby's born, and then I hand people out to my best friend. My best friend is my postpartum doula and in-house lactation support. Shout out to Hibiscus Healing, LaQuisha Roche. I'm in love with her and everything that she does. She's a mother to a wonderful 7-year-old, a child that I'm also a co-parent to. But they don't need me after they're in her hands because she is a wonderful, wonderful postpartum doula. And almost IBCLC. I think she sits for her exam this month. So yeah. And then I do some death doula work, which has been unfolding really naturally lately. I do a lot of abortion doula work. And I also support folks through miscarriage and loss. So if any of my families at any point in time during their journey with me experience a miscarriage or a loss, then I support them through that whole part. So yeah, that's all the things that I could possibly do. Like I said, I'm also a childbirth educator, an herbalist. Um, yeah, I think a food justice advocate. I talk a lot about SNAP and WIC all the time. Just because I grew up on SNAP and WIC, and that's what feels good to me. And so really helping people navigate those systems are important too.
Yes. Um, Thank you for the clarification on and just the insight on how closely connected you are to the families that you work with. Just that they see you living your best life, and maybe not even sometimes your best life at your home, is really special. And I think it's what people are talking about, is an example of what it looks like to have like actually culturally reflected care. Is that you see the person that you trust to care for you because she right down the street or they right up the street, you know? Um, so yeah, that matters a lot. Um, I would love to talk a little bit about the climate of birth in Durham. Um, yeah. Can you paint a picture for
Okay,
us?
let me actually get my thoughts together. So Durham's birth climate is really interesting, and I'm gonna write this down so I don't go off in too many different directions. The first thing I think is, Durham's known as Medicine City. So I want to address that, what that means. Um, though I think Durham is Medicine City and does have access to a lot of healthcare providers, we are still only like mid-tier um, in economic status. So it's a very diverse, and honestly, it's being gentrified really quickly, Durham County. And so we have a really diverse social economic status. Um, which also affects the way that people access healthcare and access food and other like basic necessities. And then I think doula work. So I want to really quickly talk about doulas and maybe possibly midwives in Durham or in North Carolina. Okay, so the first thing is that Durham, North Carolina is considered Medicine City. So there's a triangle in Durham, and Alex, help me if I'm right. So there's Duke University, which everybody knows, UNC Chapel Hill, and then and then I could include the Wake Meds, which is like Chapel Hill areas. So it's Durham, Raleigh, Chapel Hill, which a lot of people know is Raleigh, Durham, but it's the triangle in this area. And so Duke University is trash, and I'm gonna go on wax and say it. They're pretty terrible. The locals call Durham the plantation still. That is, as it is a fairly white space. That still causes a lot of harm to Black people, not just the Black people who work there, but the Black people who go to Duke University Hospital. Duke University Hospital, though, did buy a sister hospital that used to be called Durham Regional. That was the safer, Blacker option, where most Black children in Durham were born. Now it's Duke Regional. And while it is still a safer option for hospital birth in the area, it has now become gentrified and is a lot less accessible to Black people. So then you got UNC Chapel Hill, which again is still a pretty whitened university space, probably on the safer side in relationship to Duke University, but still less safe than Duke Regional Hospital or Durham Regional Hospital. And then you've got Wake Med, which I don't recommend any Black person ever step foot in. Wake Med is violent in probably one of the most explicit ways that you can be. So we are the Medicine City in that we have huge university hospitals, smaller private hospitals, all still not doing a very great job at taking care of Black folks and most efficiently killing Black folks who are on Medicaid. And so that's hard. So that's hard, especially again, going to the second point of Durham being tiered. So North Carolina counties are tiered in a way where it's 1, 2, 3. Durham is 2, which means we are slightly financially or resourced. We are slightly resourced in all of the like basic needs: food, housing, water safety, air safety, so on and so forth. That being said, I serve the folks who live in the houses that have been in Durham and in Durham County for decades. While there are other doulas who are serving folks who live in the houses that are 3 stories higher than every other house on the block. So it's really difficult. It's really difficult understanding what people have access to, knowing that what they have access to is violence, knowing what they don't have access to are the things that could be saving them from, these high risk gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, high hypertension, or gestational hypertension, that kind of thing. And so that's hard. I think as a Black community doula in Durham, the hardest thing is navigating the legislative things that need to happen so that Black people and Black birthing people are seen in Durham and taken care of in Durham, and literally just trying to do the work of taking care of our community on the ground. And so we're in the in-between all the time. And so I'm really lucky to have a home team of Black doulas in the area who are working really hard to do that work. We have to lean on each other to be able to do this work. And at the same time, the third point is doulas be as everything else in Durham has been gentrified, so has doula work. There are white agencies hiring Black doulas who don't care about the Black families that they serve. Um, there are white doulas who are in the way of Black doulas trying to do the work in Durham, which is irritating. And we have Black midwives in the area, CNNs, and some CPNs, I ain't gonna name no names, who are doing really wonderful work to take care of Black families, and we need more support for them. We need more support for Black midwives. There's a Black midwife right now, literally fighting the nonprofit industrial complex, trying to sign away all of her rights to her work just so they'll give her a salary so she can do the work she needs to do to save, to change the Black maternal health crisis that is the Medicine City. Especially because University and UNC Chapel Hill are research hospitals. The research that's happening at a disservice to Black families, or on the research that's happening on the bodies of Black birthing people in those spaces, are one of the things that I think are most harmful. And I mean, it's more harmful than like having a baby coming home, having contaminated water and no food to eat, So it's like that full on, like we in this. And we in this with folks who are on Medicaid, who when they show up to these hospitals are already given a different subset of options because of what Medicaid will pay for. And on the same tip, they're on Medicaid and have SNAP and WIC. So there are also a whole other subset of options that won't be given to them because of what they'll have access to, especially with all the legislative things that are changing SNAP and WIC right now. So it's hard. The climate of birth in Durham right now is hard. And we're working really, really, really hard to understand it so that we can work really, really hard to combat it. But it's a story that we're still telling.
It's a story that we're still telling. Wow, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate in-depth responses because I think it's helpful for people to know the context in which things are happening. And as you were talking, it made me want to share that one of my goals, aspirations, whatever the right word is, that I'm hoping to, or that is slowly emerging from this project, is being able to use these interviews to speak to the concerted effort of politicians and the powers that be, in how so much of what's happening in Durham is happening here in Florida, where I'm at, is happening in Brooklyn. And truly to use it as an organizing tool so that we can figure out how to move forward proactively. And so, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So there is a map. Well, there are lots of maps, and this is something that I'm actually really developing and that I want to share more. But there are so many different maps that I think are important for us as doulas to really be thinking about when we're talking about organizing. The first being the March of Dimes report cards and the maps that they use, and all of their graphics and diagrams per state, per county. There's another one that came out. I think it's National Birth Equity Coalition. They have a map that came out county by county showing people's access to holistic or safe perinatal care. The 2020 census, the 2022 census, specifically the subset on the Black population in America in 2020. The COVID 2020 what do you call it, COVID extraction or COVID death maps. All of these maps paint a really vivid picture of where Black people are living and experiencing health inequities across the South. And I really want for us to just pay more attention to those maps, particularly when we think about North Carolina. It's really clear where Black people are living. And it's also really clear where North Carolina doulas are serving and who's not getting what services and who's not being seen as effective by this Black maternal health crisis. And when I think about the maps, I just really want for us to be cautious, especially for all of the new doulas out there. When you think about where you want to serve, I'm not saying don't serve your block. If you from where you from, you gotta serve those people. But I want for us to really push ourselves and consider what would it mean for us to go into our sister counties and get really deeply connected to the folks who live in our surrounding rural areas, as those are usually the enclaves where Black people have lots of resources that are not being valued in the ways that we need them to. I hate this idea of us saying that the Black folks in rural counties are dying because they don't have. Black folks in rural counties are dying, sure, because they don't have access to some life-saving interventions, but they're also dying because the resources that they do have and do use often are not readily replenishable or not readily available to them because the state does not value them. And so go out there and make some noise and ask the questions and figure out what people in Bertie County in North Carolina are doing to address their housing crisis. Don't come in thinking that, oh, because I'm a doula, I can save them in this way, this, that, and the third. Really get in there and listen to the folks in that community and be a bridge, be a ladder, be a one-up so that you really truly understand the work that you're tasked to do, not just in your county, but in the counties that surround you as well. Yeah, so maps are like a 2-hour conversation that I can't wait to present one day. But yeah, that's the madman sketch of it.
Literally, I'm like, I can see how this can continue for a while. So interesting. Such a good point. So many gems there to share with folks. I'm excited about that. Yeah, thank you. I am just taking it all in and listening. And you did mention something that maybe I would calculate as a triumph in how you all are navigating this. It's just that you have a strong community of Black community doulas and midwives. Are there other triumphs that you want to speak about in how y'all are navigating birth work in Durham or in North Carolina in general?
Yeah. And my work is really centered on the South. If I haven't said it already, the South is so important to me because I'm from the deep South. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. The east side of our city, and I really I take it to heart when people talk about the Black maternal health crisis and they don't hone in on the fact that these things are happening in the South. I did this like math thing that I want to talk about later, but a majority of the deaths that are happening in the South. And so we have to talk about that. And we need to very clearly organize Southern doulas and Southern midwives towards being very loud about that fact and really being clear about where the resources need to be, and about what we know solutions to be and how we're not going to fold on the thing that we demand for our birthing freedom, for our birthing liberation. So that's first. I think our biggest triumph, obviously the home team is dope. I literally have Alex. Alex walked in as we were doing this interview, is chilling with me. We're doing some laptop work together. Also just chatting and talking and having someone who gets it, who understands the work that I'm doing. It has been really helpful in moving forward and feeling like we can do this work. So that's first. If you're a doula in the South, Get a home team. Get a home team. Fill your home team with doulas that you manifest, doulas who, are filling in the gaps. I can't do everything for the families that I serve. I can't be in the hospitals like I used to be in the hospital. I know too much. It's a dangerous space for me. And so I have to find the home birth space that just feels safer for my families and for me. But Alex is my like high risk in the hospital, NPH background, who is doing that work, right? Same thing, postpartum and lactation are not my ministry, but my best friend, LaQuesha Roche at Hibiscus Healing, I'm gonna just say her name one more time. Like I know what bridge to put people on, and I know what care they're receiving, and I wholeheartedly trust her to do that. Um, so that's the first thing is we're building home teams across the South. Right now, we're building home teams in Alabama. We are actually trying to build a home team in Florida. So we need to chat a little bit more about that. We're building a home team in Texas. We're building home teams in the boot heel of, I think it's Missouri. Is it Missouri? It's one of those northern but still southern states. Kentucky, Ohio, Chicago, um, Brooklyn, Harlem. We're building home teams in South Carolina. Um, we are actively locally organizing. Um, and all of those home teams or representatives from all of those home teams right now are a part of our doula work study project. And so the doula work study project is a professional home for Black Southern doulas and Black Southern doulas only. It is an all Black space where we talk about financial and personal goals. We talk about the small business part of being a Black doula, but we also really talk about the spiritual and ancestral work and workload of having a doula practice or owning a doula practice, and really understanding how we can organize in a way that makes impact in our communities. Look, so one of my families just walked into the coffee shop. And they just see her. Look at this one walking. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah. So and I'm doing a birthday party here this weekend. My birthday party this weekend is here. It's for the babies. So there's gonna be Pierce Freelon is gonna be here reading his new book. I'm gonna be reading a book. There are gonna be sensory bins out on the patio. That's a great question. It's on my Instagram, but let me show you a photo real quick. Here it is. Yeah. Yeah. Show really cute. So yeah, so we're doing a lot. It's a lot. But the Doula Work Study Project is just a really wonderful space for us to share the skills that we have as doulas, for new doulas, for seasoned doulas who are coming back to the work, who feel called to come back to the work, but really for Black doulas who are trying to do this work sustainably and in deep relationship with the folks in their communities, period. Um, and so I think the biggest triumph is that we've been able to do our monthly master classes on financial goals, personal goals, on calendar and capacity setting for doulas. So why are you taking on 10 birds a month when you don't even know how to take 10 birds a month? Why are you doing that alone? Who's your backup doula? All of the things. So really just building the capacity and the skills of Southern Black doulas. And then the last triumph, I think, was our Yemoya Headwaters retreat, which was just a wonderful time. I think in all of these that we do as Black doulas, one of the biggest things that we forget is that when we go into these harmful systems, we are also Black people. And a lot of the times, we're Black people who have experienced the same institutional harm. And so going back into that constantly really shifts our nervous systems. It changes the way that we wake up in the morning, and we really have to tend to ourselves, our spiritual selves. And one of the ways that I think we can do that best is by laying our asses down. And so the Yemoyah Headwaters retreat was us coming to a Black North Carolina beach, historically Black North Carolina beach, at a Black owned beach house for 4 days or 5 days, 4 nights, and just relaxing, just gathering. We talk shop, we talk a lot of birth, we talk a lot of abortion, we talk a lot of politics, but we also just talk person to person. Um, we really build community, we build um, family relationships at the retreat, and we eat 3 meals a day, which never happens for any of us. We go out, we're blessed by the ocean, by the shore, which I just believe North Carolina has one of the most playful shores on the East Coast. We take dips into the cold water, we relax. We really wanted this year to have a midwife come in and teach us some comfort measures. She wasn't able to come this year because she got sick, but it is what it is. We still had a really wonderful time. And I really think us prioritizing rest really helped us come back to our communities in a less scarce way, in a more abundant way. And we can't wait to do it again in less than 9 months. So yeah.
Love to see it. It is just so well deserved, you know, and needed. Um, I do think that things like that more often, more abundantly, are part of what will sustain us. So I'm glad to see that y'all are doing that. Um, let's see. On that same note, I want to move to the question about, I mean, you are everywhere. You are doing a lot. It sounds like you wear many hats in the community, in your household, for yourself. Um, so I love to give folks the opportunity to talk about what you need. Um, yeah, what do you need to be better?
Yeah. Okay. So, Alex, what do I need to do my work better? Yeah. What do I need to do my work better? I need to be held accountable. Oh, absolutely. I love a good chicken. Hey. Yeah. I need a home team. And I got one of the most gorgeous home teams on the East Coast right now. I can't wait to be able to not say that anymore though. I know, because I think the Southeast deserves more glorious home teams like you, big dog. But no, seriously, I really think I've done really well for myself in asking for the things that I need. I manifested just about no, I manifested each and every person on our North Carolina home team. It is a gorgeous thing to know that I don't have to do a damn thing alone. I don't have to go to a training alone. I don't have to go to an event alone. I don't have to do anything alone. They're my sisters, my sister girlfriends, my boyfriends, they're all just deeply committed and connected to the work that we're doing. So really having them with me is what I need. What we need as a collective though is more white folks who have access to disposable income to sign up for our Patreon. We have a $25 a month Patreon where co-conspirators, white folks, I want to be clear, non-BIPOC people with access to disposable income who want to donate, who want to sustain the work that we're doing can sign up for our Patreon at tinyurl.com/reparations for the number 4 repro wellness. We need that. We need all that money. We need all them resources. I want that and I'm gonna have it in this lifetime. Um, and that money goes towards us being able to send Southern Black doulas to these high ticket, high priced doula trainings like spinning babies, hypno babies, and for them to be able to bring that back to our monthly master classes and teach the rest of us. We call it Each One Teach One. So help us fund that. Help us fund chiropractic, pelvic floor, acupuncture, acupressure, nutrition care. That's usually out of pocket for Black families who need it. Um, Help us fund bail funds. Honestly, we support a lot of midwives who are illegal or don't have the licensure necessary. They do have the training, they do have the knowledge and the deep connection to community to be doing the work that they're doing. But the laws don't like it. And so we have a bail fund. Even, I will say, even midwives who are duly certified and licensed. And in particular, I'm talking about Dr. Stephanie Mitchell, who is not only a CNM, but a CPM and a DNP. So she's got a master's degree, a doctorate degree, and she's got a professional certificate and a license. She got all of the boxes. And Alabama is still giving her a terrible time in opening her Black-owned, Black-led midwifery birth center. And they want to put her in jail. They can't wait for her to catch her first baby in her birth center that she did fundraising for herself. That we are so excited to support. They're just waiting for her to catch her first baby so they can throw her in jail. And we want to be ready to have her bail money. We want to be ready to make sure that she can still, after she catches that baby, get out the next morning so that she can do that home visit for that Black family, because we just know what we're up against. So that's what we need. We need folks to send us money for that through the Patreon, or you can send it to any of the links in my Instagram bio. You can also follow me at Want to Be Well Doula. Or if you want to follow my herb things and all the conversations that I have about Black farmers, Black food, and Black foodways, at Viola's Herb Garden, Viola's Herb. Yeah, and that's it. That's all the support I need. But I'm feeling really good and feeling super, super grateful to be doing this interview. So I have most of the things that I need, but I could use a little more white folks' money. Sure.
Definitely. Always gotta ask for it. I love it. Oh, midwifery. Is midwifery in your future?
Yes. Yes. And probably Vanderbilt. I was really clear that I wanted to train at a Southern college. I'm still holding out that there will be an HBCU midwifery something soon. But until then, it looks like Vanderbilt. I have a bachelor's degree in gender and women's studies, which is not the BS in nursing that you need for most midwifery schools. So right now, it looks like Vanderbilt's direct entry program.
Okay, that's exciting. I'm rooting for you. Whenever that the answer is yes, it's time right now, I'm rooting for you.